Hey guys, Drifter here. It's halfway to Halloween, so I am back to talk about some more scary movies. I was going to do a bit more of an analytical breakdown, and then I discovered that Magikarp Used Fly is doing what I wanted to do, but only better after taking a long break as a gamer. So instead, what I'm going to do is just talk about some of the weird stuff I've been watching, just some of the stuff that I'm personally into, interested in, curious about, or things that were memorable to me. And one thing that I really like is I like intense movies, especially scary ones. I like movies that just grab you by the throat in the very beginning and don't let up all the way through. One of my favorite things to do is mix that with Delta 8, which if you're in a red state, you would know is a sort of legalized version of cannabis here. Go on a trip, watch a wild movie, and have some fun. I also like them artsy if possible, a little bit of cleverness, a little bit of meaning, some good direction, maybe a person that would later go on to make great things, but this was their first low budget film. Also a bit of a sucker for oldies because pre-CGI, all the stunts would be really dangerous and fun. So today, I want to talk about 4 very intense, scary movies that will melt your brain, and one of them that's just plain weird. Instead of going all retro, we've got 2 from the 2020s, 2 from the 90s, and just 1 from the 80s. I wanted to start off with a controversial pick, which is 2022's Skinamarink. Uniquely, this $15,000 micro-budget analog horror film was directed by a YouTuber, Kyle Edward Ball, that made this kind of content on his channel, got some money together, and made this really little movie that just went viral in a huge way, and it was also very controversial. Some people consider it heart attack inducing level scary, other people consider it very dumb. There's kind of no in between there. And the reason for this is that the movie is filmed from the perspective of 2 children that have been trapped in their house by a demon. The demon has a variety of unusual magics. It makes windows and doors disappear, cuts off phone lines, controls food, the TV, gravity, time, all this kind of stuff. But the filming perspective is usually a camera that has been set down on the floor or left somewhere or is deliberately low as if to be from a child's perspective. It's a very, very dark film. It's a very, very grainy film. And there is an extreme emphasis on sound design. So if you do watch this one, I would say that it's much better with headphones on because you can really hear all the kind of creepy things that are going on, and it'll really pull you in and make you think you're 9 years old again. Or it'll just bore you to death. Some people are really susceptible to this type of horror. Some people get sucked into the situation like I did, and it was very intense. Other people, since it's a lot of static shots, it's a lot of slow moving, tension building, and honestly grainy footage, a lot of people find it quite boring, unwatchable in many ways. So I understand that opinion too. The basic plot of this is there's a happy family, mom, dad, 2 kids, and some sort of supernatural entity, a demon, a monster, a ghost, something invades the house, and it seems to just enjoy playing with people. It traps them there. It has an absurd amount of powers. It can do creepy things, and it's menacing for sure, but not in a deliberately evil way. It seems to be just a thing that's having fun with us, toying us, like a kid playing with an animal that's dying. And it does get very scary. You do see some monster stuff, a little blood, and I will say children actually get hurt in this, not in real life, but in the context of the plot. So if you can't watch a movie where kids get hurt, I probably wouldn't recommend it. The scene with the phone, I can't believe this phone is the new horror villain of the decade. It was so scary.
I hurt myself and I feel sick. Yeah.
And if you want to know more about the plot, I will say the plot of this film is a little bit hard to discern. I'm going to recommend Wendigoon's plot summary and analysis of this movie. It is a fantastic overview of what actually happens in case you come out curious because the plot is intentionally somewhat vague. So that was my opinion. As a little special bonus, I decided to bring in my wife, JWO Designs, to offer her opinion of all of these films, which she also watched.
Absolutely not.
Moving along, let's talk about an entirely different type of intense film, Maniac Cop 2 from 1990. This one was directed by, I believe it was Larry Cohen, who did a whole series of relatively subversive films in the 70s and 80s. This one was kind of on his way out. And the cool thing about this one is it's this weird mix of like action horror, like it's got a spooky serial killer-y element, ghosty thing going on, but that manifests in some over-the-top Terminator-esque action scenes that are fantastic, and you don't even need to see the first one to get the plot point. all of the good stuff, including all of the big kills and all of the good action scenes, are in like a little 5-minute collage in the very beginning of this movie. So you get to see all the cool stuff from Maniac Cop 1, and then part 2 picks up right off the bat. It has Bruce Campbell in it, which is really fun, and the plot is there is a cop who is a zombie and cannot die. So think Jason Voorhees as a cop, or maybe the Terminator as a cop. And it's kind of only a horror movie because of that zombie unkillable cop element. Outside of that, it's mostly action, again, reminiscent of Terminator, but it's very wild, intense, unrelenting action in the best possible ways, like this chainsaw fight. This is a movie that moves at a fast pace. It doesn't mess around. It has a plot and things are happening. It's not the greatest or strongest because you're not really supposed to think or analyze a whole lot. Everything that happens is an excuse to get you to the next scene. Did we have the chainsaw fight? Okay, we'll do one plot thing and now it's going to be a woman on the hood of a car. Now we're going to do one plot thing and we're going to blow up a building. Now we're going to do one plot thing and we're breaking 50 panes of glass in an homage to Hard Boiled, you know. It was really, really fun. It just jumps from one set piece to another. And the weird thing about the movie is I can't say it's pro-cop or anti-cop because the cops in the movie are good guys that are fighting the evil cop, but the evil cop is also the bad guy, and they talk about corruption, and there's good cops and corrupt cops, so to speak. There's people that blame the cops, people that rely on the cops. There's not a very clear message in this one. You can kind of read it however you want. Personally, it's a great movie to watch if you're stoned and you want to make cop-related jokes. Nobody is above a little bit of parody, and a zombie unkillable super god cop is perfect for a lot of parody. Me and my wife had a lot of fun watching this about it. Let's see what my wife says about Maniac Cop.
Unnecessary police violence, which is like normal, I guess, now.
Maniac Cop 2 was a fun kind of intense film, but the next one we're going to talk about is probably the most intense of all the movies today, and that is Hardware from 1990. The short version is this is a movie about a robot who wants to drill a woman. But let's talk about the long version too. This is a very low-budget, hyper-violent sci-fi horror film that was directed by Richard Stanley. This guy is a South African filmmaker. He got famous very quickly and would, after this and a few others, and would rapidly do The Island of Dr. Monroe in 1996, which was a huge failure, and caused him to retire from directing until I think it was 2018, 2019. Nicolas Cage specifically requested him to come out of retirement so that they could work on The Color of Outer Space together. So, a little fun side story there. This is sort of a brutal dystopian future evil robot movie. There's a fun cameo from the musician Iggy Pop in the very beginning as this wasteland warrior kind of guy, and it provides two distinct flavors of intensity. The very beginning of the movie is about discovering a robot and its journey to find itself in the home of a shut-in artist, being the main female character. And as you kind of go through that, some of this was filmed in real-world messes, disaster zones. You can actually see how chaotic some of this is. Some of these people may not be extras. And then other parts are filmed in very well-made, oddly messy in a good way kind of sets. And the topics that she explores in the very beginning are oddly premonition of the future. There is an issue with pollution. There's billionaires wanting to make off-world colonies and people wanting to go there. There's issues with government brutality, police brutality, lack of policing in certain areas. There's issues with fertility and also abortion centers for women that don't want to have children in this messed up world. They predicted our legalized and branded cannabis that everybody was buying and smoking like cigarettes in this, and a whole bunch of other things. But it is intense in a really brutal kind of way. And the second part of this movie, why it's so intense, is once the robot comes online, it's a super violent humans versus robot battle to the death, reminiscent of a very low budget version of Dread. So basically, one of the main characters finds this head, thinks it looks really cool, gives it to his artist girlfriend, who installs it in her art piece, not knowing that it is a self-replicating government-created murder bot. And once the murdering starts, it's bright lights, it's flashing, it's violent, it's wild, it's rock music going pretty much constantly, cutting back and forth to the crazy stuff on TV that parallels what the main characters are going through. There is a quadruple cucking plot in this one, okay? There is the main character, her boyfriend, her second boyfriend, who is also his friend, who's intimate with her, the robot that wants to drill her, as we already discussed, and the next door neighbor is what I believe to be a serial killer, at the very least a pervert who collects women's shoes and has a terrifying herpes sore and is one of the grossest, nastiest characters ever to grace any film whatsoever. And all of these people are fighting to be with the lead female actress. The movie goes... it's pretty slow in the beginning, but after a certain point, it's very fast, very chaotic, bright colors, flashing lights, dynamic camera shots. It swaps back and forth between taking a moment to do sort of French expressionist art and then goes straight to something trashy for no particular reason. And the movie is kind of cleverly filmed. As an adult or as a person with a keener eye watching this not on VHS, you can see that sometimes the sets are kind of cheap. Sometimes the wall wobbles, and the robot itself is not the best or most dynamic puppet, but it is cleverly filmed. However, you put all of this together and you have a film that is 100% intensity from start to finish. It kicks you right in your eyeballs and your teeth. And if you're there for that, if that's the kind of experience you want, I think you'll really like Hardware. Let's see what my wife had to say about it.
This is for people that really enjoy unnecessary violence against women.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. That's so bad. You make me sound like a filthy pervert.
I mean, there is a filthy pervert in the movie.
He has a villain.
Yeah.
Moving along, our next movie to talk about is Blood Machines from 2019. This is a film that more or less pays homage to films very much so like Hardware. It's like the retro wave version of Hardware. It matches a lot of the intensity, a lot of the lighting and color choices, a lot of the cinematic style, but this one does, of course, embrace digital effects. You may remember some of the names attached to this project, such as Carpenter Brute, from my music video reviews, because it's essentially a sequel to a music video, which is kind of a weird thing to say. He made a music video called Turbo Killer. They took that concept, did a Kickstarter, got about $150,000, and cranked out what is just barely less than a movie, technically a mini-series about 50 to 60 minutes long, and it's basically a very violent retro wave space opera with Carpenter Brute music playing in the background constantly. The plot of this is that there are scavengers hunting living ships that can only be controlled by women that are kind of enslaved and turned into AI. So the ships that they're in are big bio-organic vessels, and only women can fully control them. And they do that by capturing the ship and then enslaving the women. It has very strong anti-violence against women themes, because the main antagonist of the series immediately comes across a group of women. There is a violent conflict, lots of people die, and that part of the plot isn't very important because this entire experience is 100% style over substance more than almost anything else I have ever seen, all building up to a glorious, maybe 8-minute long finale that I've watched over and over and over. It's basically a god-tier music video unto itself. Colors are bright, music is intense, acting is all over the place. We got the violence there. We've got this really neat kind of overall vibe and look to the set that reminds me of a more intense and higher budget version of Sci-Fi Channel's Lex. And for me, this is just perfect. This is right where music and art and trash all collide into something that's very intense and wonderful and fun to view, especially when you're high. So I would recommend it to anyone. If you don't have the patience to watch through the first 30 minutes where a lot of women kind of get beat up, unfortunately, just skip to the very last episode, and maybe even the last half of the last episode, and just watch that. It's glorious.
It is basically retro wave artsy horror. It's okay.
The last film I want to talk about today is much less intense than the others, probably more upbeat, and definitely the weirdest, worst overall quality, yet is oddly memorable. That movie is Highway to Hell from 1992. Technically, this was filmed in 87, 88, and it was left unfinished and dead for a number of years before the director got the special effects done, cobbled it together, and dropped it on VHS. The basic plot of this film is that a pizza delivery boy's girlfriend gets kidnapped by a hell cop, which I assume is police in hell, and he takes a hot rod car, a holy shotgun, and his dog and drives into hell to save her from Satan's clutches and return back to the mortal realm. It's horror, romance, action, comedy, car chase, also like weird sort of progressive stuff at the time. You have Gilbert Gottfried as Hitler. You have Ben Stiller and Jerry Stiller cameos. Got some actually kind of big cameos in this. I'll also say that some of the set pieces and some of the concepts in this movie are very clever. I loved the diner full of only corrupt cops. It was glorious. I loved that the highway system in hell is paved with good intentions, and all the people that went to hell with good intentions tell them what they meant to do, and the demons are like, all right, and then they just grind them up into paste and turn them into the road in a sort of comedic Monty Python kind of way. The movie is, when I say mixed bag, that means that the quality of these set pieces and the effects are not equal. Some of them are oddly neat, memorable, cool, practical effects, real stunts, kind of gross. Other ones are laughably terrible, almost like maybe we should edit this out. And I do love, the coolest part of this movie is there's a scene where the main character runs into a succubus. And I can't show very much of this on YouTube, but it's revealed, oh no, the hot woman's actually a demon. The demon is terrifyingly, disgustingly gross and tries to sexually assault the man, and it has one of the nastiest fights I've seen in a long time. And then yet, despite all of this, the ending to the film is wholesome. We're definitely in spoiler territory here, so you can skip like the next minute if you don't want to hear about the ending. Essentially, the ending of the film boils down to the main character making a deal, a bet of some kind with Satan. Satan, who had been his friend throughout this entire movie, and Satan, who was ultimately behind the scenes driving all of the plot. Not really the most clever of twists. You could see that coming a long way away. But he makes a deal, a car race. If he wins, him and his girlfriend and the kid go home just fine. If he loses, they're all stuck in hell forever. Satan tells him that he genuinely likes this guy and will allow the bet solely for his amusement, and he allows the main character to race to escape. Obviously, they do win, but instead of being mad or enraged or butthurt about it, Satan's just like, well, that was fun. You know, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and that's all right. You know, I had a little bit of fun today, and it was kind of oddly wholesome / okay of an ending to an otherwise really violent and wacky movie.
Well, I only watched one scene. It was probably the most wild scene, and no one really needs to watch. It was like a lizard, like you know, a rest stop lizard demon woman trying to have sex with this dude. It was horrifying. I didn't like it. Big no.
All right, guys, that's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something interesting about these fine films. You've definitely learned something interesting about how I spend my spare time. But if you're looking for films that are intense, if you're looking for a journey, a ride, something off the beaten path that's guaranteed to either excite or offend, but definitely not bore, I would recommend checking out one of these movies, whichever one floats your boat. In the description below, there should be direct links to where you can find them if they are on streaming. I will say that for the middle one, Hardware, that one is incredibly hard to find. It's very rarely on streaming services, so that might just be blank. And if you enjoyed, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Or if you want, you could recommend a topic or even just movies for me to talk about next. Oh, I almost forgot. Ideally, theoretically, in the near future, I'm getting a bed streaming rig, so I should be able to host Amazon Prime movie nights, and we'll get into some of this kind of stuff and do some live commentary and have some fun, hopefully, in the near future. All right, guys, that's all for today. Drifter out.